Their defense is a joke.
What it really comes down to is I would love to have either of them.
They don't have a prayer in their secondary. They have nothing.
So you're saying just don't draft Blunt?
I'm saying don't draft Blunt.
He was unbelievably efficient last year.
You know that they use their running backs in the passing game a ton.
I'm drafting him tonight.
That's Team Huevos. Huevos gigantes.
Hey everyone, welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, joined as always by Mike Tagliere. Tags, we're going to talk Week 12 waiver wire pickups today. At the end of the show, we'll be spending maybe a little bit more time on trade targets since the trade deadline is coming up and you guys are preparing for your playoff runs. So Tags, we'll get into it here in just a minute. How you doing first though, buddy?
Doing good, man. I know you got involved a little bit, and Dan didn't bring it up on last night's podcast, so I figured I'd bring it up today. And the fact that my Office poll that I started, it wasn't even a poll that I started. It was the Office. I ranked the characters, and I kid you not, Bobby. Like, you can look at alternate responses and see you have this guy way too low, or you have this guy way too high, and it's the same guy. And I think it went back to like talking about the Office and like,
and people get like mean about it too. Like, you're an idiot. Now I'm not following your fantasy football advice.
Yeah, no, it's kind of remarkable, but I think it goes to show just how great that show was in terms of like the character makeup, because there were characters that applied to every person out there, and I mean, this is something
and, like, no character was like hated by everybody. Everyone was like, wait a second, Gabe is an amazing character, and I thought he was the worst. So it's really interesting.
Todd Packer even had backers in the chat.
You got to block those people, man.
Yeah, true story.
Hey guys, today's podcast is brought to you by the Fantasy Pros Chrome extension, which is going to provide you instant expert advice for your team on any website. So this is something that we offer through Fantasy Pros. Obviously, it's a Chrome extension, but what it's going to do is it's going to help you start the right players. You can set your optimal lineup with a single click based on the consensus opinions of the top fantasy football experts. It's also going to give you the top expert waiver analysis. So basically, you can see instantly who's available in your leagues from any site. It's going to get you immediate expert analysis on any waiver transaction without leaving your league's website. It's pretty amazing. You can check it out at fantasypros.com. It's the Chrome extension, and it's only available for MVP and Hall of Fame users. So if you want to get the most out of your Chrome extension, you need to check out our offer at fantasypros.com/offers. Basically, it can get you a Hall of Fame package for $10 over 6 months. That is an incredible value. Again, that's fantasypros.com/offers. Tags, you ready to jump into the waiver wire, man?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be to talk about this waiver wire that is, I mean, it seems like it gets worse every single week.
You don't like it?
No.
I mean, we've got two starting running backs who are going to get pretty much all the volume in their backfield. One of them plays behind the best offensive line in football.
But he's.
I'm not excited about the talents, Jonathan Williams and Bo Scarborough. Like, I don't know if either of them's a top 50 running back in the NFL, but we know with running back, the situation matters a lot more. First of all, Indianapolis is playing ahead in a lot of games. I mentioned their offensive line, and we saw that evidenced by how important it is with Jonathan Williams going for, 147 yards on just 14 touches against Jacksonville. Tags?
Yeah, Jacksonville's been a much better matchup. And in this week, the reason I'm not super high on Jonathan Williams this week is because he's a two-down back. He's not one that's going to be involved very much in the receiving game. I think he's had 4 targets over his entire career. So he's not going to get it done there very much. They have Nyheim Hines for that role. We don't know the status of Jordan Wilkins. If Jordan Wilkins is active, it's going to crush any amount of confidence that you could play Jonathan Williams, because Wilkins is the better running back. But it seems like Wilkins might be held out considering it's a Thursday game. But the reason I'm not super high on Williams, outside of the fact that he's not a 3-down back, is because this game can go negative on them really quick. This game is in Houston against a Houston team that just got embarrassed against Baltimore. I do happen to think...
It's supposed to be the game of the week, and it was a miserable game to watch. I mean, Lamar Jackson was really exciting.
Yeah, so that's the only part of that game that was exciting. That was a game I picked the under on, so it kind of went... I don't want to say it went as I expected, because I didn't think that Deshaun Watson wouldn't do anything, but I didn't like him nearly as much as some did. But I do think this is a game where they bounce back. I think they match up really well against the Colts. So I'm a little worried for Jonathan Williams in the game script, because if it goes south really quick, like we think it can in Houston, I want to say they're a big favorite in this game. So if it goes south, we could see him get 10 to 12 touches. And if he's not getting many targets in the passing game, that could be like a fantasy floor of like maybe 4 or 5 points, which would definitely hurt your fantasy team.
I think that's fair, but once you get outside the top 20 running backs, isn't that the case with everyone?
Yes.
Doesn't everyone have that kind of floor? I mean, I guess you've got guys like James White who have a nice floor, but they've got no ceiling. There's just risk once you get to this stage. And if first of all, there's some people out here who don't realize Marlon Mack broke his hand. He had surgery on that hand. He's definitely out this week. It's expected he's going to miss multiple weeks after this week as well. Do you think Jordan Wilkins is just going to come marching right back in and actually take this job from a guy who went for 147 tags?
Well, I mean, again, the matchup kind of dictated a lot of the production that he had because Jacksonville, they were struggling to begin with to stop the run, and then they lost Marcel Darius. So that's a team that's really struggling right now to stop the run. So I like Wilkins better as a talent. I don't think that Wilkins would walk in and just steal the role because Jonathan Williams, again, did what he was supposed to do in the role that he was given. But the biggest concern for me in this one is game script. And if you don't have a 3-down back, it's gonna land him in basically the RB3 section of the rankings this week. And it's not to say that that's not useful. It is. But if you're let's say that you have Tariq Cohen, someone like that, or maybe even a Darius Geis, I don't think that I would be running to start Jonathan Williams over those guys. I think
I'm starting Jonathan Williams over both of them.
I think that the floor would be similar with all the players, and I don't think you get the upside that you do with the other players with Williams. I don't see it in this matchup. So again, he's worth picking up. He's my number 2 waiver wire ad overall. So I'm not saying it's terrible, but I'm just saying that it's more of that just goes to show how much I really don't love this week of waiver wires.
I know there's a lot of people who are thinking, let's move on to the other players, but this is really important. There's a lot of people here who have FAAB budget remaining. This is the consensus number 1 pickup of the week in the industry. And a lot of people have number 1 waiver wire priorities too. So we need to talk about it. This is going to make or break people's leagues. And Tags and I disagree quite a bit here. So you can say that the game script could go south. I think that that's true. But let's keep in mind, everyone was thinking the same thing about Marlon Mack against Kansas City. And what happened? This Indianapolis team schemes really well and beats good teams. If they go into Houston this week and come out with a win, come out with a 2-touchdown victory, would it surprise you, Tags? I think it's a toss-up.
I don't see that happen. I could see it being a close game. It's a divisional game, second matchup between the two teams. But knowing Indianapolis is so much struggling to stop the pass right now. They're a good team against the run, but again, that's not really the strength of the Texans. They do have, it seems like they're going to get Will Fuller back for this game. Kenny Stills and Kiki QT, those guys are playing. Yeah. I think that Houston matches up really well with this Colts team right now. And let's not pretend that Marlon Mack was dominating. I mean, coming into last week, he had one top 12 performance all year long. He was like
still
a low end
15 fantasy running back.
But he really wasn't though in terms of like what he offered fantasy teams. Like I would consider him like a low end RB2, high end RB3. Obviously he was having a big game before he got knocked out. But Jonathan Williams is not Marlon Mack, and he's not a 3-down back. He's not going to get a lot of targets.
Wait, you would rank Marlon Mack so far as like the 22nd or 23rd best running back in fantasy football?
Probably. Basically,
he's 13th. He's 13th in fantasy points scored. Behind Leonard Fournette.
But that's skewed though. It's skewed though based on two big performances. And if you were to go back a few years, you'd see Frank Gore finish the year as the number 13 running back in fantasy, but he sucked. He was awful. But year-end numbers, and it's like running backs have had a hard time staying healthy. Like obviously the position naturally just has that, and that's why there's the zero running back truthers out there. But I would have much rather. I think Philip Lindsay's been a better running back to own in fantasy football this year. I think Todd Gurley's been a better running back to own. Mack, again, that week 1 performance where he finished like it was like over 100 yards and a couple touchdowns, that like carried his numbers throughout the majority of the season.
And it absolutely won the week for his fantasy teams.
Yeah, but then he's hurt his fantasy teams a lot of other weeks because he's not involved. Again, he's not involved in the passing game, and that's basically what it comes down to. I'm just not a big fan of 2-down backs is all on a team that I don't project to win, and I do not project the Colts to win this game.
He's had one bad week. I mean, besides that, he's been an RB2, RB3 every single week, man. Because he gets the touches behind this incredible offensive line. I mean, I guess we're going to just have to agree to disagree about Jonathan Williams. But if I have FAAB money, if I've got the number 1 waiver wire priority, I'm picking him up because I think we've gotten RB2 every week until Marlon Mack returns.
The reason I just say
and
I'm
that, not saying Jonathan Williams is an RB2. I'm saying the Colts offensive line makes RB2s, period. Well, and Jonathan Williams is their starter.
So here's the finishes for Marlon Mack after that week 1 performance that I talked about. He finishes the RB38, RB13, 54, 14, 22, 15, 33, 23, and it's like this week's pending. So that's like a whole lot of, it's a mix with a ceiling of high-end RB2 production and a floor outside the top 40, which is really obviously bad. So
you said Marlon Mack?
That was Mack. Those were his finishes in PPR formats this year.
Like for flex?
Yeah, like no PPR among running backs. Like those were his finishes among running backs in PPR formats this year.
He finished outside the top 40, even though he was getting 20 touches and 80 yards.
He did against Oakland. He had 11 carries for 39 yards, didn't catch a single pass. Finished as the RB 54 that week.
That was the one. Yeah, that was the one bad week. The other ones though, that seems really.
Yeah,
odd.
it's just because like in PPR formats, and that's traditionally what I play, and I should say that PPRs we generally talk half PPR, which it's kind of like a good medium, but I do play in a lot of PPR leagues. It's just again
half PPR is the standard in the industry at this point. I mean, that's what the majority of public leagues play in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you wanted to pick up Jonathan Williams, I don't think Bo Scarborough is like that much different in terms of like who you're picking up. I think Bo Scarborough has a winnable matchup against the...
I was going to mention Bo Scarborough. I mean, he's my number 2 waiver wire pickup this week, and he's even worse than Williams. Like, if you want to say Williams is like the 55th best running back in the NFL, Scarborough's like 80th. I'm not even exaggerating either. But the thing is, he's going to get the... There's a chance... It's more likely he gets the touches than Ty Johnson. Like, Ty Johnson could come back in. Oh, he's the starter again. But Scarborough was pretty good against a pretty good Dallas defense this past week, Tags.
I thought Scarborough looked pretty good. I mean, that was a revenge game for him because he was with the Cowboys for a while. So it's like maybe there was a little extra edge. But no, he did look decent. But he's another guy. He's a 2-down back. He plays for a team that doesn't run the ball a whole lot. They haven't really stuck with one guy. I know he had 14 carries in that game. But Ty Johnson was out most of the week with a concussion. He was finally cleared, I think, on Saturday. They don't want to give J.D. McKissick a whole lot of touches. I just think it's a messy timeshare there, which is why I'd rather have Jonathan Williams.
Well, now they've moved on from Johnson, and Scarborough look good, so why would they give it back to him?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think that's why I'm saying.
What would you put the odds at that Scarborough gets 14 touches again? 50-50?
Yeah, I think that's a good number to put it at. But if you that's the thing is if you say touches, I mean carries, because he's not going to get anything in the passing game. He's not as good as a receiver as Ty Johnson or J.D. McKissick. So that's, again, the concern. Jonathan Williams might catch a pass or two, kind of like Marlon Mack did. So I prefer Jonathan Williams. He plays in a better offense right now, but
the matchup for Scarborough is great this week. He gets Washington.
Yeah, they're very comparable options to me this week. I feel like you can make the case for either of them, and I have them both in RB3 territory.
Yeah, after Washington, though, we get Chicago. I don't think I'd start Scarborough in that game. This is after buys as well. Minnesota, definitely not starting him. Tampa Bay, definitely not starting him. And then who knows if he's even the starter by week 16 in Denver. So if you're picking up Scarborough, it's as a week 12 streamer period. That's it.
That's kind of how I feel about Williams too, because I feel like I feel like Jordan Wilkins is gonna like come back and eventually eat into that. So I think both of them are, but Williams has a chance to actually be more than just a 1 week guy. So I have him higher.
That's fair. Okay, so how much FAAB are you spending on either of these guys? Are you spending the number 1 waiver wire priority?
No, and I'm not spending enough to get them either.
Okay, are they your number 1 pickups for the week, or would you go with a wide receiver that we'll talk about in a bit?
I'd probably go with a receiver just because I prefer the upside. Wow. Like I honestly, the thing is I have to rank these like players in order of like how the majority of fantasy players like look at their lineup, and I think the majority of teams can probably be like, I could do without Jonathan Williams this week, and I would rather own again. And I know we've talked about it countless, and I don't know why these guys aren't owned, but Alexander Mattison and Tony Pollard are guys that I would rather roster. If you're not starting Jonathan Williams this week, if you're not starting Bo Scarborough, do not pick them up. Like,
okay, let's say you're competing for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You need a number 3 running back or a flex. Let's say you need a flex. Are you picking up Jonathan Williams this week for your flex, or is there a wide receiver that you like even more than Jonathan Williams?
No, if it's for this week, I pick up Williams for sure.
Okay, yeah, I would as well. Now, if you are a good bet to make the playoffs, I agree. I'd rather own Alexander Mattison or Tony Pollard. Not everyone is fortunate enough to be in that situation, but I mean, we're talking about potential league winners here, Tags.
Yeah, no, and for sure. And the thing is, I know some people are tired of hearing about Madison, about Pollard and stuff like that, but
sure.
And there's no guarantee that these guys ever pan out, but do you really want to keep guys like Gus Edwards on your bench, guys like Trey Edmonds? These guys are not going to win you a fantasy title, so why are
I don't know. Gus Edwards might if Mark Ingram goes down. I think he's got some upside. But he's not as much as Tony Pollard or Alexander Mattison.
Right, guys that are heavily involved in the passing game. Like we would see Madison and Pollard heavily involved in. I mean, Pollard, I can make the case that he might be a better stash than Madison. Like,
oh baby, you're coming around. Let's go.
I am. Like, it's just.
Do you remember the preseason show? You know what I'm talking about.
I do. I mean, I still wouldn't draft him as a top 12 running back, but at the same time, like this offense, the passing game is moving like well, and teams they're not going to treat Tony Pollard the way they would treat Ezekiel Elliott. So, and Elliott hasn't even looked particularly great this year.
Right.
So.
Which happens with running backs when they get that many touches. I mean, it's not like
and get that much
Elliott's
money,
all of a sudden bad or anything like that, but he's nowhere near as good as he used to be.
Yeah, it could be getting that much money too.
Yeah, if I will say this, okay, I'm going to double down on my preseason position. Dan Harris agreed with me. You were all alone. Dan and I became best friends in this moment, and you were left out. If Ezekiel Elliott was injured for the rest of the season, and we did our drafts today, I'd take Tony Pollard over Leonard Fournette.
That might not be a bad thing. I don't know.
Wow, man. I was expecting you to fight me.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
It's really close between like the cutoff between RB4 and RB12. You know what I mean? Like after you get those top 3 this year, they're all pretty close. So playing behind this Dallas offensive line in this great offense, I mean Pollard or Madison. People got really tired of us saying, hold on to Alvin Kamara, guys. Don't drop him. If people dropped him, go pick him up. And then what happened? He was a league winner because that's the kind of talent in situations these guys are in.
Yep, that's basically what it is. And that's why you hold on to them, right? Is like, what's the worst thing? Is like you have someone sitting on your bench. You're going to have those other guys sitting on your bench anyway.
Sure. So, Tags, you mentioned Jonathan Williams. Obviously that this game script could go south. If it does, is Nyheim Hines a good pickup this week?
I don't really think that he's someone that you need to pick up, though. They haven't involved him a whole lot. It's a dire situation. Like, if you need to play Nyheim Hines, it's pretty ugly.
If they've had bad game scripts, and what do? Do they pass it to him? A little bit about the same.
They go to their tight ends a lot more than they do the running backs. It seems like Hines, no matter what's going on, he's not getting a big role. He scored his first rushing touchdown of the year with Mack going down. He wasn't even like featured in that role, so it's like his role didn't even grow with Mack out of the lineup. So yeah, I'm not into playing Nyheim Hines right now.
Okay, Tags, we're going to do something different this week. We're going to go to wide receiver in just a second. First, we're going to go to quarterback, though, and just get this out of the way really quick. It is so bad. I thought Nick Foles looked terrible. Like, the final stat line tags looked fine. 296 yards, 2 touchdowns. But it was because he threw 47 pass attempts, and Indianapolis had such a big lead that they were basically playing a conservative zone and just saying, okay, go ahead and just nibble your way down the field. And even so, he still had 14 incompletions, 1 interception. He got bailed out twice by DJ Chark on great plays. The defense dropped a couple interceptions. I thought Nick Foles looked awful, man.
Wow. I mean, that's a game that I did not watch very much of as it was going on. Like, I watched parts of it, and I kind of flip back and forth in terms of, like, because I only have so many games to choose from. Like, there's 4 TVs I'm able to choose from, and like, that game just didn't get very much screen time for me. But I'll go back and watch Foles because it makes a difference. But I do like the fact that he targeted DJ Chark a bit. Tennessee is a team that's been struggling, obviously aren't healthy in the secondary. Malcolm Butler out for them. That hurts, and they've been allowing more fantasy points as of late, but I don't think Foles is like the ideal streamer this week.
That's why I brought him up first. I think most people, if they get a streamer, they're going to pick up Foles, or maybe Ryan Tannehill against Jacksonville. Where are you going?
I mean, Jacksonville hasn't been like a really, really good matchup for quarterbacks. Like, there's only one quarterback this year, and that was Patrick Mahomes, who hit like 8 yards per attempt. Ryan Tannehill's been really good, though. Like, he's totaled at least 19 fantasy points, I think, in each start. But I think I would probably go with Darnold.
Me too. Darnold, back-to-back weeks. Let's just stream Sam Darnold, man.
Yeah, I've been on Darnold in terms of the last couple weeks, and people told me I was on crack. I remember telling me one guy telling me that he'd rather start Brian Hoyer over Sam Darnold, and well, for saying that to me, like the guy you did. I'm glad that you
wasn't
played.
Me, was it?
No, it wasn't you.
Okay, I was making sure you're not I don't remember what I said.
Sam Darnold,
I hope I didn't say that.
No, Sam Darnold, I'm not going to say he's like untouchable and that he's like a phenomenal, like he's not a can't miss start or anything like that, but the reason that you kind of have to like him here is that he has put together a couple nice games, and he has the Raiders traveling as far as an NFL team can possibly travel this week. They're going from the southwest corner of the country all the way up to the northeast corner of the country, so that's a long travel, and like like there's historical evidence that shows when teams travel across the country, it's pretty tough for them to do so. So that's the concern with the Raiders defense this week. Obviously, Darnold staying at home. It's not a bad matchup against Oakland either. I don't even think Jeff Driscoll's like a terrible matchup after proving that he can get it done against Dallas last week.
Right, yeah, because he can run the ball. I mean, he had 8 carries for 51 yards, and Dallas is a very good secondary. I was pretty impressed with Jeff Driscoll. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be a quarterback long term or anything like that, but from a fantasy perspective, compiling 27 fantasy points on 26 pass attempts against Dallas, that's noteworthy. But I would agree, it's Sam Darnold for me. And you mentioned the concern about traveling. My main concern about Oakland is they just suck. Their secondary is really bad. I mean, they're a good football team, but their secondary is definitely their weak point.
Yeah, they've been generating a pass rush recently, and it's been really good, and that's the reason that it's covered up some of the deficiencies in the secondary. They played, a really good game against the Bengals. They had Nevin Lawson step in at nickel cornerback, and it might have been an upgrade over LaMarcus Joyner because like Tyler Boyd was just shut out basically. But again, that was against Ryan Finley, who he doesn't look good. But it's not a great week. Here's one name that's not on our list, Bobby.
Sure.
So we saw it announced that Trubisky has a hip pointer, which is a bunch of crap. But whatever.
What do you mean? You think that they're faking it?
Yeah,
so
I think it's a garbage. I think it's an excuse. I think that Nagy was like, "Hey, you don't have it today. You don't have it. I'm going to use this to get you out of here and whatever." I don't believe it. I don't.
Okay.
Against the Giants, it's a great matchup. If Trubisky practices and he plays, I actually think that he might be the best streamer this week. I don't know if I have the guts to play him, but he might be. Like, he's thrown 3 touchdowns in 2 matchups this year against bad defenses, and the Giants are just that.
India's Allen Robinson. Like, the Jets don't have an Allen Robinson.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm just saying, for those of you who are dire, and if Trubisky plays, like, let's say Darnold's gone and you're choosing, I don't think Trubisky's a bad option.
Coming from a non-Bears fan, Tags, because I'm sure there's some people out there who are like, oh, Tags, he's just saying that because he's a homer. First of all, I completely disagree with that. Tags has bashed Bears, especially Trubisky, many times. He wants you guys to win your leagues. That's what we want. And I would agree, Tags. If Trubisky is available and he's healthy this week, I'd rather play him against the Giants than Sam Darnold against Oakland.
Yep, the Giants have allowed 8 of 10 quarterbacks to finish with 20.5 or more fantasy points this year.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. Tags, are you ready for this, man?
Yup.
Not wide receivers. I'm talking about the Manscaped ad read. I read through this bad boy, and it is spicy.
Uh-oh.
Support for the Fantasy Pros football podcast comes from Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Jingle balls to the walls, fellas. Listen up. Untrimmed pubic hair is a thing of the past. It's time to gear up and get yourself the gift of shaving this holiday season. I'm talking about the Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0. So I talked about, my friend's experience with, hurting himself when he was trying to trim in the past. I want to tell you guys about one of our listeners, though. In fact, I've got like a dozen people who wrote in and said, oh yeah, I've definitely nicked my balls when I was shaving. And one guy was like, dude, I did it when I was younger, and I never wanted to do it again. And then you started talking about the podcast, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this again. I really need to do this. And he did it again. So guess what he did? Oh, no. He ordered the Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0. So far, so good. That's what he told me, at least. That's why this revolutionary company, Manscaped, has redesigned the electric trimmer. Their Lawnmower 2.0 has proprietary advanced skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't nick or snag your nuts. It's waterproof, too, so you can use it in the shower. The Lawnmower 2.0 comes inside their Perfect Package 2.0, which makes for the perfect gift this holiday season. It's literally everything you needed to keep trimmed, cut-free, and smelling nice down there. And don't use the same trimmer on your face as you use on your balls. Guys, that is disgusting. The Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0 also includes the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits. Why not also on the smelliest part of your body? I'm also thankful for the Crop Reviver. This product comes with the Crop Preserver, keeping your balls from sweating, smelling, and stinking. These products all smell great, and their manly scent is attractive and will help set the mood, if you know what I mean. It also comes with Manscaped's boxer briefs that'll keep you feeling fresh all day long. 'Tis the season to Manscape, so get yourself, your dad, your brother, and your friends the best gift of all, the Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0. Get 20% plus free shipping with the code FANTASYPROS at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. Again, that's 20% off and free shipping with code FANTASYPROS, all one word, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Clean up your nuts and make Santa proud this year. How was that, Tex?
I'm glad you're doing it, man. I wouldn't be able to get through it. I really wouldn't.
I kept a straight face the whole time. I'm very proud of myself.
You should be.
I'm more proud of myself than starting Sam Darnold last week, which is really saying something.
That is saying something.
Because I got a lot. The people in my league made fun of me.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, dude, you're a fantasy analyst and you're starting Sam Darnold, you idiot. You know what I mean? And he scored 26 points and I won my game. I won by 40. It didn't matter who I started at quarterback. But
well, I'm glad
let's go to the wide receiver position. I think you're going to say Allen Lazard is your favorite wide receiver this week. Is that true?
I think that you are absolutely correct.
Let's hear why. I've got him at number 5. I think he's a good pickup. It's really close for me between 1 and 5, but he's not my number 1.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about, like, again, it's not so much if you need a streamer this week, because I don't think you want to play him against San Francisco. It's about the idea that this is a guy that had a growing role in the offense that was getting consistent targets, like more consistent targets than Geronimo Allison. He's playing more snaps than Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So if he's going to be the number 2 option for Aaron Rodgers, why are we not stashing this guy on our bench and just saying, let's see what develops out of the bye week? You know, when a team goes into a bye week, they could say, look, you're going to enter the starting lineup in 2 wide receiver sets. Geronimo, you're going to come on the field in 3 wide receiver sets, and we're going to go as is. That can very well happen, and if that happens, people are going to run to their waiver wire to pick up Allen Lazard. So beat them to it. You don't have to spend much FAAB. I'm only willing to spend like 3 to 5% of my FAAB budget on him, so it's not like I'm going crazy, but he's one of those guys that could potentially be a league winner if things go right, and that's who I'd much rather have on my roster than these other guys that we're going to talk about.
I don't want anyone to take this as me arguing with you, Tex, because I agree. I like Allen Lazard, the pickup. I love the number 2 wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers, even if it was an absolute no-name. I think Lazard's actually pretty talented. But here's what I think some people are thinking. Well, hasn't he been the wide receiver 2 for Aaron Rodgers, and what's he done? 4 for 65 against Detroit. He did score a touchdown. 3 for 42 against Oakland, an incredible matchup. Kansas City, 5 for 42, no touchdown. The Chargers, 3 for 44. Carolina, 3 for 27 in Week 10. Why is it going to get better, Tex?
Well, those last 3 matchups obviously were difficult. The Chiefs have been much tougher on perimeter wide receivers than people understand. The Chargers have been tough against wide receivers. In Carolina, they've allowed some volume in terms of production, but on a per-play basis, they haven't been very giving. So it's like they haven't been great matchups, and he hasn't like been fully declared. They've been involving Jake Kumaro and having Valdez-Scantling play some snaps.
They tried to go back to Valdez-Scantling, and it didn't work. They gave up. Lazard is back as the wide receiver, too.
Yeah, and that's basically where I'm at with it. You're going to have, again, you have a tough matchup this week against San Francisco, but then you look towards the next week and you're like, oh, the Giants in Washington. It's like, if Lazard plays against the 49ers as the number 2 receiver, I'm going to feel comfortable starting him the next 2 weeks.
Yep, I agree. Against Washington and the New York Giants, as you said, in Week 13. And then Week 16, he gets Minnesota, who has been bad against perimeter
They've been
wide receivers.
Terrible against receivers this year.
Yeah, they really need to clean that up. Because, I mean, if Minnesota gets their secondaries act together, they could win a Super Bowl, but it's been so bad, man, which was supposed to be their strength of this team.
Yeah, no, they're stopping the run really well. They're obviously throwing the ball well. Cousins has played fantastic. They're running the ball. So that's like the missing link there, but their secondary is the problem right now. So, yeah, it's definitely not a matchup to fear.
So who do you have at number 2 behind Lazard?
That's where it gets dicey. It depends on what you want. I don't even want to say Corey Davis, but he's there.
Oh, you've got him at number 2.
I mean, I don't like it. I really don't. And I honestly like
at Mike Tagliere NFL. Let him know what you think on Twitter.
No, don't. Please don't.
Actually, don't. You know what? Some of you guys are so mean. If you're going to be mean, just go to someone else's Twitter. I don't want you guys hating on my boy.
I probably should lower Corey Davis. Like, even as I was about to say it, I'm like, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it.
He's got upside. Week 14 against Oakland, Houston in Week 15. He could go off. Ryan Tannehill's looked great.
That's basically what I was looking at when I was going through this and thinking, okay, who's the number 1 receiver? And I think we saw not this past week, but the week before when A.J. Brown was in the lineup and Corey Davis was out, A.J. Brown did nothing. So maybe it's like a wide receiver 1 problem for the Titans in terms of their offense and what they're calling for, because it's brutal. But yeah, I have Corey Davis there as the number 1 receiver for a team with Ryan Tannehill, who's played much better than Marcus Mariota. I'm just saying, like, I would rather own Corey Davis than Darius Slayton, who is the clear-cut number 3 wide receiver on his team. when Sterling Shepard's back, and it seems like Sterling Shepard
Is
might
Shepard
be
going to
back.
be back? Because if he's not, Slayton just had 14 targets.
Yeah, it seems. Well, Shepard returned to practice on Monday, so I'm guessing right now that Shepard is going to play, which is again, it's just going to bury Slayton. Shepard's been out for a long time, and Darius Slayton's targets have just. It's unpredictable, right? And the idea of fantasy football is being as predictable as we can. And before that 14 target game, he had 4 targets, 5 targets, 2 targets. That's not sustainable work, especially with Daniel Jones, who's been really feast or famine in terms of like he either has 1 touchdown or he has 4 touchdown passes. Against the Bears, that's going to be 1 or less, most likely. So I don't like Darius Slayton.
I'm a big Darius Slayton believer. With that said, I don't like him for a fantasy pickup right now. I think he's a good football player. I think he deserves to be a starter in this league. He's not going to be a starter, though, and he's going up against Chicago this week, Green Bay next week. You can't start him in either matchup.
Yep, I don't know if any of these guys are like if you're looking for starters this week, I have a different conversation, and Corey Davis would not be the pickup for me. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Because again, Corey Davis, Darius Slayton, AJ Brown, those guys are going to be up there in terms of waiver wire rankings. But if you're looking for someone this week, I would not pick those guys up.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought up Corey Davis because I really think he could help people's fantasy teams. I just didn't want to be the guy to get all the hate for recommending Corey Davis. Now, I don't have him in my top 5, but I think he's a very quality pickup. I've got my number 1 tags. I'm curious what you think, and it's just a 1-week streamer kind of thing. If you could have the number 1 wide receiver for a team going up against Cincinnati, a guy with over 200 receiving yards in the last 3 weeks, while Juju Smith-Schuster was there, while Deontay Johnson was there, and these 2 guys are both expected to miss this week, wouldn't you pick up James Washington?
I can't do it. So the reason is because even if those guys miss this game, it's actually a downgrade for James Washington because he's going to match up with William Jackson then, who is the best cornerback for the Bengals because Ray Kirkpatrick's out for the year. So that's the downgrade for me. And James Washington has been. He's a guy that I used to believe in.
He's really been disappointing, hasn't he? But the last 3 weeks against good defenses, he's been all right.
Yeah, but he's kind of like background noise, right? Like he's a guy that's been background noise in terms of like, no team is focusing on stopping James Washington. It's kind of like, hey, if this guy beats us, we'll live with that. And going against Cincinnati.
So like my number 2 guy, you're going to make fun of that one too because it's the same exact thing. He's background noise.
Yeah, and that's basically all it comes down to. I just don't like James Washington because of that. I would rather take some other guys that we'll talk about here in a moment.
Okay, so my number 2 guy, as I mentioned, he's been great the last 2 weeks. 106 yards and a touchdown against Minnesota. 115 and a touchdown against Detroit. The week before that, he had 8 targets as well. So 8 targets, 7 targets. Last 3 weeks, we know New England's going to line up Stephon Gilmore on Amari Cooper. And we know that McCourty is going to be lined up against Michael Gallup. Tags, is this another Randall Cobb week?
It could be. It really could be. And like this is one I put thought into, but I'm like, in the end, I couldn't do it though. Like looking at New England, it's you could look for the best matchup, and he absolutely has the best matchup among the wide receivers. But knowing that New England has allowed 1 wide receiver touchdown this season,
and it was kind of a fluke too.
Yeah, it was that Golden Tate play. And on top of that, it's not just the touchdowns either. They've only allowed 107.6 yards per game to wide receivers. Like
that is so stupid.
On average.
That is so good.
Yeah, on average 5.03 yards per target to wide receivers. So even if a wide receiver gets
the 1970s?
Yeah, so it's like even if a receiver like Cobb, who's maxed out at 8 targets, 8 targets would amount to on average 40 yards and no touchdowns against the Patriots.
Man, that's a good point. And then he gets Buffalo, Chicago, the Rams. I might need to rethink this one.
I thought about it. Believe me, I thought about it because he does have the best matchup of the receivers. You kind of do like this process of elimination, but
it's just so hard to look at someone who's like, okay, all of a sudden he is getting a lot of attention by Dak Prescott, who's playing incredible football, by the way. Yeah. And not only is he getting a lot of attention, he's doing great with it. This is someone who's formerly been a really good fantasy asset. It's hard to say no.
Yeah,
and you're making a compelling case that I probably should.
Yeah, I mean, like Demaryius Thomas is a guy you talked about last week. I think he's a solid
3
floor option against Oakland. Like he's a guy that if you're looking to get a floor out of a fantasy wide receiver and you just want like, let's say you need 8 PPR points, I think that he's a guy that you could lock in for that type of production. He's finished basically in between the wide receiver 22 and the wide receiver 45 in the majority of his games in a Jets uniform. So that's where I'm slotting him. But if you're looking for like lightning in a bottle, and it's kind of fitting in terms of the type of player he is, Taylor Gabriel is
Yep.
We saw him get double-digit targets against the Rams, and it is what it is. Like, he didn't have a massive game, but it was solid. He's a guy that's going to get targets from time to time, and it seems like the Bears, they will target him when Allen Robinson's going to be shadowed by a top-tier cornerback. And Janoris Jenkins is the best cornerback on the Giants roster, and I would assume that he's probably going to follow Allen Robinson around, and that would mean Taylor Gabriel would match up with rookie DeAndre Baker, who, by the way, listen to this, Bobby. He is allowed, it's on the perimeter too. So these are a 69% catch rate, 18 yards per reception, and a touchdown every 8.5 targets in his coverage. This is over a span of like over 50 targets. So it's not like a small sample size. So he's allowed a 149.9 passer rating when targeted.
So basically you're saying he's the best cornerback on the Giants.
When for targeting wide receivers, absolutely. But Janoris Jenkins.
I was making fun of the Giants.
I got it.
They're so bad.
But yeah, Gabriel is a guy that, like, even Anthony Miller could be sneaky, but Gabriel is the one
Miller
that's playing.
Looks good last week, by the way.
Yeah, Gabriel is a guy that could like be a very sneaky play. Like he's actually given a decent floor. Like he does get quite a few targets in this offense. And again, Trubisky's health and that stuff. But Gabriel again, at least six targets, I should say, in 3 of the last 4 games. The matchup. If Matt Nagy's done anything with Trubisky, it's like try and build his confidence in bad matchups, and he's done that to this point against Washington, against the Lions, and I would anticipate them doing it against the Giants if he plays, of course. So Gabriel's someone to keep an eye on, and he's going to be available on your waiver wire.
Okay, Tags, I want to ask you about a couple other wide receivers here that I think are going to get some attention on waiver wires this week. Hunter Renfrow goes up against the Jets. Robbie Anderson at home against Oakland. Should we be picking up either of these two?
Robbie Anderson, I have the highest of those, and he's like right behind Gabriel. He's kind of like that player that, he's really sucked. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like he has played against the Dolphins, the Giants, and the Redskins over the last 3 weeks, and in that time, he has 4 catches for 50 yards and 1 touchdown combined. Like if he had that in one game, it would be like, okay, that was a good game. That's what he should have done against those teams. But this week, he's going to see Darryl Worley in coverage. He's a guy that is not fast. He's like a 4.6 speed guy. Like he's very slow. He has allowed 3 completions in his coverage that have gone for 37 plus yards this year. So Anderson is like, he's not someone I really want to trust. I actually think you can drop him if you've been holding on to him.
Agreed.
But if you're looking for just some upside, a guy that has one play upside, I think Anderson's there. I'd probably rather play Gabriel. I would this week, but Anderson is definitely in that conversation.
Let's talk end of the year upside. This is someone who would be a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 on your team, Tags, that could take a big step forward. Devin Funchess is coming back for Indianapolis. And then we've also got N'Keal Harry, who surpassed Jacoby Myers as the number 4. Now Philip Dorsett's out. So N'Keal Harry's basically going to be starting for the Patriots this week. And they get Houston in week 13, Kansas City in 14, Cincinnati in 15. Is there a chance either of these two guys becomes a weekly starter by the fantasy football playoffs?
I don't really want to bank on them being finished. And Devin Funchess, that there's like, I don't know if it was a bad rumor that's gone on with him, where it's like some people have said that he's returning, and I legit read an interview with Funchess from last week saying that the bone's still not healed and he can't speed up a bone. He said it heals at its own pace. I'm just trying to do what I can to get back on the field. It sounds like he's nowhere close to returning. So Funchess is actually
returned to practice.
Did he? I don't.
Yeah, he was back at practice on Wednesday. Unless that was a false report.
Well, what I'm saying, like, they interviewed him last week, and I read, like, it was a quote from his mouth saying that I'm trying to do everything I can to get back in the field, but it's a bone that heals at its own pace. That's what I read. So I'm, like, confused about Devin Funchess' status right now, but it sounds like...
that was per their head coach. Well, they said he would return to practice on Wednesday. So whether or not he followed through on it, I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, I'll look closer into that, but it sounded like from his mouth. Like that's basically what I looked up. I was looking for quotes from him. That's why I'm not really into that. But one player that he's playing tonight, so it could really change things. But one player I'd rather roster than both those guys is Mecole Hardman. Hardman is probably available on waiver wires because he's a guy that sees like 1 to 3 targets per week. But you know what is crazy, Bobby, is that he reminds me so much of like the emergence of Tyreek Hill. Do you remember when Tyreek Hill, like we continually watched him and it's like, there is no way you can keep him on your roster. Like the guy sees 3 targets per game. No, he's not going to continue scoring. And he did continue to score. And it's still part of Andy Reid's offense. And Mecole Hardman is, I mean, if there's anybody in the NFL that can catch Tyreek Hill, it might be Mecole Hardman.
We talked about this last week, man, that there's a chance, maybe it's a small chance, 5, 10, 15%, there's a chance that Hardman starts to get targets from Patrick Mahomes because they just realize the kid's too good to not give the ball to.
Yeah.
And if that happens, we're looking at somebody who could break out and help you guys win your leagues. Now, their matchups in the fantasy playoffs tags, this is what concerns me.
Yeah.
Patriots, Broncos, Bears. Yuck, man.
Now, could it help that he's background noise? Could it help that basically the Patriots would be worried about Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins and Travis Kelce? There's so many things to worry about. Denver obviously is not going to have Chris Harris Jr. cover him. The Bears, they've been a tough matchup, but do I think they're unbeatable? No, I do not. And again,
especially by someone as fast as Hardman. I mean, and that's the glory about Andy Reid's offense is anybody can put up big plays at any time. And if Hardman gets the ball, we know that he's as capable as anyone.
Yeah, and let's pretend imagine for a second that that Sammy Watkins, shocker, Sammy Watkins were to get injured. All of a sudden, there's 8+ targets available per game, and Mecole Hardman, and then obviously Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. There's so many different pieces where if they lost one piece in the passing game, Hardman would get a bigger role. And I think I'd rather stash him on my bench than guys maybe a Darius Slayton, especially if Sterling Shepard's coming back.
Any other wide receivers you want to talk about, Tags? Russell Gage gets Tampa this week. Tim Patrick came back from injury and saw a lot of targets. Josh Reynolds is still starting for the Rams. Chris Conley had 8 targets in Nick Foles' first game. I guess Cole Beasley might be a pickup this week.
I'm not really interested in a lot of those guys. I'll write the primer and figure out which guys that I'm targeting, but I already went through that Bears-Giants game, and that's why Gabriel stood out to me as someone that could really benefit from Janoris Jenkins shadowing Allen Robinson.
I would agree with that, Tags. We're going to talk tight end and DST in a minute, and then at the end of the show, we're going to be talking some trade targets, guys to sell as well. First, though, a message from one of our sponsors, Travis Matthew. They've recently launched a premium performance brand called Cater. It's a premium performance brand focused on creating versatile, comfortable footwear and accessories. They've released a line of golf footwear, and I've seen this stuff. In fact, I've got some of it. It's incredible. And casual footwear, each is outfitted with the tech you actually need and the look you actually want. After noticing most performance products on the market are over-designed with exaggerated technology and branding, I agree with that, by the way. They've set out to combat the trend toward overcomplication. Without sacrificing style, they strive to incorporate useful technology into premium performance products. So they've got, I'm going to give you guys three examples of this. So they've got Daily, which is breathable and lightweight. It goes with everything. It comes with an assortment of colors and fabrications, including mesh and wool. They've got Legend, which is a premium performance tour golf shoe, a traditional look with outside of the box comfort. And then the Moneymaker, which is a premium performance spikeless tour golf shoe. The sleek athletic style is your secret to making green on the greens. They deliver performance you actually need while complementing your look as well. Go to cater.com/football. That's CUATER.com/football to get 15% off your first purchase. All right, Tags, on over to the tight end position, and I never thought I would be saying this at the start of the year. There's 6 guys I wouldn't mind picking up if I needed a tight end.
I couldn't agree more. I actually, this is a tight end week on the waiver wire. There are 5 guys that I would be pretty stoked to pick up, and I think you could make the case for 7 of them.
So who's your number 1 out of this group?
It's Dallas Goedert.
Okay, I've got him at number 2. I don't have any problem with this. Obviously, I'm the Dallas Goedert guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as I mentioned, so obviously last week when we talked about it, we didn't know that Alshon Jeffrey was going to be out, which was oh no. All of a sudden, it's they're starting Mac Hollins and Nelson Aguilar on the perimeter and putting Jordan Matthews on the field. It's this wide receiver group is ugly, and Zach Ertz was probably going to see some of Stephon Gilmore as soon as that happened. So I moved Goddard up to my tight end 13 last week. So I obviously moved him way up in my rankings because of that. And going forward, it's seems like this Alshon Jeffrey injury is something that's worrisome. They don't have wide receivers there. They're using both tight ends. So Goddard is a guy that has standalone value on his own, and going against Seattle, it's a good matchup for tight ends.
Not just that, Miami, New York, Washington, Dallas the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, and if something were to happen to Zach Ertz, obviously we know that Dallas Goedert would walk into double-digit targets every single week.
I think he'd probably be my number 3 rest of the season tight end if Zach Ertz was hurt.
Yep.
I would go Kelce, and then I would probably go Waller, right? If Hooper was healthy, I'd put Hooper number 2, but...
Yeah, I mean, he would be up there. He'd be a top 5 tight end. He'd be one of those guys that you start every single week for sure.
Yep, absolutely. I've got Cameron Brate number 1 tags, and I know that this is going to be a little bit controversial. I'm curious what you think about it.
I'm not there with Brate. I know it was a 14 target game. And,
14 targets against New Orleans, the number 1 defense against tight ends. 14 targets for a tight end.
Yeah, and we saw how that worked out for Jameis Winston. So I don't know if that continues. There's a
10
lot
receptions, 73 yards. I mean, it's fine.
No, in terms of what Brate did, it was more about in terms of game plan and like what they did as a team. They threw the ball too much. They didn't run the ball enough. That it was a poorly coached game. Like the Bucs, Bruce Arians deserves he should just that's one of those games where he needs to go back and say,
what's going on with him, man? I thought he was going to be the greatest hire.
He's been fine in terms of I think that he's doing with what he can. Like the offensive line needs to be rebuilt. That's first and foremost.
The
Jameis Winston has too many
exceptional. He really turned that around.
Yeah, he has too many what the F moments. Jameis Winston does, and I don't know what they're doing with him. I would imagine that he's going to be their starting quarterback next year. Like they're going to work out something with him as their quarterback because they really don't have any other options. But I mean, OJ Howard, if they were unwilling to trade the guy, I don't think
they're 25% of the snaps. After he dropped that pass, and I know that you saw it, Tags. It was the most disgusting drop that led to an interception I've ever seen in my life.
I don't understand that logic. I mean, I watched the play, and I was watching that game as it happened live, and I was like, oh no. It was one of those, oh, OJ, no. But then, you watch back, if you've played sports before, that there's certain times where things just, they don't go right. Like DK Metcalf had a play like that earlier this year where nobody touched him. He just dropped the ball on the sideline. They lost the ball. They lost the game. And I was worried he was going to get punished for that. He didn't. Do I think that OJ Howard is going to be playing 25% of the snaps moving forward? I don't. Do I feel the need to own OJ Howard? I don't. But Cameron Brate, because of that, I don't feel the need to own him.
I won't fight with you. I'm not especially passionate about it, but I do know that Jameis Winston is passionate about his love for Cameron Brate. We've known that his entire career.
Yeah, Jameis Winston needs to do something different. There's a saying in life. It says to achieve something that you've never achieved before, you have to do things that you've never done. And Jameis Winston, maybe your love for Cameron Brate needs to go.
Maybe he just needs to stop making boneheaded decisions.
That's true, too.
Every single game, I'm just like, how did he do that? Like, how can a quarterback be so good at times and just so incredibly awful at other times? I don't remember any other quarterback with this much talent being this much of a doofus on the field sometimes.
Yeah, side note, I think that he's someone that I would have mentioned during the bye portion. Like, I'm usually against Jameis Winston as a guy going into fantasy playoffs, but looking at their schedule, I can't back away from Jameis Winston because even if he has a bad game, he's going to throw the ball a ton. They're playing the Colts, they're playing the Lions, and then the Texans. It's like, okay, give me Jameis. Let me buy him off that bad game.
How many yards is he on pace for? Because he's just every single game, man.
Yeah, no, he's put up buku numbers. It's because they have no.
He's on pace for 5,650 pass attempts, 30 touchdowns, 29 interceptions. Tags. Oh man,
that is not good. Not good at all.
Holy, that would have to be the NFL record, right? What is the record?
No, it's a lot. It's up there. It's like a.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, there's a lot, but it might be the record.
I'm looking, man.
Because I remember there was a season that I recall there was 27 interceptions or something like that. I don't know, but that's a lot.
42. Oh, man.
Who was it?
Forget that. George Blanda. Vinny Testaverde in 88 had 35.
Wow, that's crazy. But I mean, today's NFL almost promotes positive touchdown to interception ratios. You can't even compare it to the old days because it's guys like Mayfield, who's had a terrible year, has 11 touchdowns, 12 picks. Like Mitch Trubisky, for example, he's been bad. Obviously, we all know that. He's thrown 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions.
That would have been incredible back in the day.
It would have, yes. It would have been an all-time great touchdown to interception ratio. The NFL today, they want to promote less interceptions, more touchdowns. So, but Jameis still, again, I would still buy him for the playoff run. I think he's going to be fine.
Trivia question, okay? I've got 3 guys with at least 26 interceptions in a single season in this millennium. I bet you can name all 3 of them with 3 guesses.
Eli Manning's definitely one of them.
Eli Manning is one of them. Ding, ding, ding.
Is Cuddy one of them?
Cuddy is one of them. Ding, ding, ding. Can you get the number 1 on the list?
It's a different guy?
It's a different guy.
Oh, I'm gonna blow this one. Is it? No, it wouldn't be Ryan Fitzpatrick, would it?
No, that's a good guess, man. I don't know if he's ever played enough for it to be.
Yeah,
him.
that's
It's
what I was
the interception leader, Brett Favre. 29 interceptions in 2005.
That makes sense. Makes sense.
And Jay Cutler, by the way, is Cuddy, if you guys were wondering.
Yeah, no, Jay Cutler, I'm not kidding. While watching the Bears this year, I've kind of like missed Jay. I'm not even going to lie.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, he was fine.
He's still the best. He's still the best Bears quarterback of all time, I think. And that's the reality of being a Bears fan.
After Dallas Goedert, who do you have at number 2? Jacob Hollister, Noah Fant,
Ryan Griffin,
Russ Dwelly,
Ryan
Griffin.
It is possible that Ryan Griffin is everything that people wanted Chris Herndon to be. So
what? Just the tight end for
yes.
Sam Darnold. That's what it really comes down to.
Absolutely. And it's like you look at this and you say Ryan Griffin, he nearly all of his production this year has come over the last 6 games, which is when Darnold returned. And he's a guy that you could just rely on. There was 2 bad games that he had in there against the Giants and the I think it was the
Patriots.
The Patriots, yes. Those are 2 brutal matchups for tight ends. Like the Giants have been good against tight ends. The Patriots have been like dominant against every team. But outside of that, like he's been putting up fantasy points nearly every week.
Yeah.
And going against Oakland and Cincinnati and Miami over the next 3 weeks, it's like Ryan Griffin is someone that I think you could stream like each of the next 3 weeks and be okay with it.
So tell people why he's a better pickup than, I mean, I guess you made the case for Griffin, but why don't you like Jacob Hollister more? Why don't you like Noah Fant more, who, by the way, got 11 targets again, still leading the team in targets since Emmanuel Sanders was traded 4 weeks ago. Jacob Hollister's getting a lot of targets, especially in the red zone from Russell Wilson. David Njoku was a top 10 pick at tight end. He gets Miami when he returns.
Yeah, and that you just named my next 3 tight ends on my list. Was Hollister was up there with Njoku and Noah Fant, but Hollister, the reason is because it's like you look at the matchup against Philly, and it's Philadelphia has been a brutal matchup for tight ends ever since Jim Schwartz came there with Doug Peterson. It's just a bad matchup for them. They have Minnesota after that, the toughest matchup for tight ends. So it's like the next 2 weeks, I really don't like him very much. Noah Fant against Buffalo this week, that is awful, like absolutely awful. The Chargers have been good against tight ends the week after that. So I do like these guys, and I think that they probably should be rostered considering how bad the tight end position is. But it's all about matchups, and it's like Ryan Griffin has an immediate good schedule. He's already proven that he can have production in this offense. Sam Darnold has like had success when going to him. David Njoku.
It hasn't happened consistently enough, though. 3, 2, 4, 8, 1, 5 targets. I mean, would you rather have, I get the matchup for Noah Fant against Buffalo. Would you rather have 8 targets against Buffalo or 4 targets against Oakland? It's close. It's close, but I'm leaning Fant.
Yeah, I'd probably say 8 targets, I guess. So Fant, I understand that's what I'm saying. I think there's 5 tight ends that you could, we've already talked about them. And David Njoku, by the way, if he plays, he'd probably move up to maybe my number 2. I just don't know if he's going to play because the beat writers seem to think that he's going to need like a week or 2 back in practice before they put him on the field. But all of a sudden that Cleveland offense, Baker Mayfield's thrown multiple touchdowns in back-to-back games. They have matchups with the Dolphins, the Steelers again, Cincinnati, then the Cardinals, and it's like David Njoku, he could be a league winner for people that are just like looking for a tight end on the waiver wire right now.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. What about Ross Dwelly? We need to talk about him before we move on, too.
I don't have him in the conversation just because I do think that George Kittle is going to come back.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pick up Dwelly. It's more of like, if he's...
And plus, his record, his career mark is 29 yards. Like, let's not pretend just because he had 2 touchdowns, he's all of a sudden like the man.
Correct.
Yeah. I guess we should probably say Vance McDonald, too. I think he's going to be in the top 12 for ECR this week. I don't like him, though, even against Cincy.
I mean, I don't have an issue starting McDonald this week. I haven't got into that game so much, but against Cincinnati with their limited wide receivers, he's probably going to get targeted. Vance McDonald's not very good in terms of like catching the ball and getting open. He's good after the catch. He's like a crazy athlete, but...
Yeah, I mean, he's got 40 yards is the most he's had all season. But yeah, he does have 7 targets in 3 straight games.
Yeah.
All right, Tags, DST, who you streaming?
The Broncos were a team that I looked up, and they had under 40% ownership heading into this week, and it was probably because they were playing the Vikings. But they're one of the best 5 defenses in the NFL, so I'll take
going
them
up against one of the best 5 offenses to target.
Yeah,
best 10.
Right. I mean, I mean, Josh Allen's been sacked, I think 3+ times. I think it's 4 different occasions this year. So it's like, I do think they'll be able to get to him. And Allen hasn't played a really, really good defense in a while. So I know he's been limiting the turnovers. He's been playing pretty well. But if there's somebody that can force it, it's Denver. And they're going to have Chris Harris Jr. on John Brown.
24 sacks in the last 7 weeks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a good one. That's obviously my number one streamer. I'm excited about them. But if you can't get Denver, go out and get Tennessee. I already mentioned Nick Foles and how bad he looked. And they weren't really pressuring him because, again, they were sitting back in a conservative zone, just letting him, waste time on the clock. When these teams pressure Nick Foles, first of all, Jacksonville is one of the worst pass protections in the NFL. Foles historically has been very bad under pressure. Again, I'm a Jags fan. I love Nick Foles, the person, the player. He's really easy to root for. I don't think he's a very good quarterback, especially under pressure, and that Jacksonville offensive line is going to make it a hard time for him against Tennessee. I think Tennessee's a top 8 play this week.
Nice. I actually like that. They would have been my number 2 choice.
Okay, any other streamers that you're fond of, or you just want to move on and talk trades?
Yeah, let's talk trades.
Okay, who are you trading for, Tags? Who's a good buy low at this point?
Oh, there's a few. I do think that Philip Lindsay is someone that I might look into just because they talked about using him more this week, and he totaled 18 touches to Royce Freeman's 9 touches. That's obviously something that's a 66-33 timeshare, which is something that has not been the case. It's been like a 52-48 type share. So knowing that Brandon Allen's still under center, I think Lindsay is a decent buy low. I also think, and I mentioned this on the show last night, so I'm curious to hear your take. Dan said I was bold, but I think Sony Michel is someone that you could buy at basement prices, like for absolutely nothing right now. And his playoff schedule is against the Chiefs, who rank 30th, the Bengals, who rank 31st, and the Bills, who rank 20th and allow a lot of touchdowns. Yeah. The Patriots, historically, what they've done is they get closer to the end of the season, they start running the ball a little bit more, they start resting some of their pass catchers. That could be the case, and if that is the case...
Colder weather, too.
Yeah, the weather too. I think he's set up for a big fantasy playoff stretch.
Important question. Is he going to get more than 14 carries per 2 weeks like we've seen the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's been ugly, man. He's been inefficient, but again, the Patriots...
I mean, what would you trade him for? Would you trade Devin Singletary for Sony Michel?
I would absolutely. If you're trying to win a fantasy championship, you would, because Devin Singletary is one of the sells for me. He's going to play... His schedule in the playoffs is the absolute worst thing ever. He's playing...
Exactly. That's why I asked it, man. I'm all aboard. If you've got Devin Singletary, trade him for Sony Michel right now.
Yeah, the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Patriots in the fantasy playoffs. That is the worst schedule you could possibly... You can't even make up something that bad.
Would you trade Carlos Hyde for him?
I would, yes.
Me too. What about Kareem Hunt? There's people excited to acquire Kareem Hunt.
No, Kareem Hunt is right there with Carlos Hyde for me. Is a guy that he's fine. But he would not be like a league winner without an injury to Chubb. So
I would agree with that. By the way, Chubb is my buy low right now. Mm-hmm. Just because everyone's like, well, hold on, Kareem Hunt's back. They might not exactly do their research and be like, wow, Nick Chubb's still getting more carries than he was before Kareem Hunt came back. But they're looking at his last 4 weeks. 0 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns, 0, 0. So he's got 10, 9, 12, 9 fantasy points. He went up against New England, Denver, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. Those are 4 of the top 6 defenses in the NFL. Rest of the season, he gets Miami, Cincinnati, Arizona, Cincinnati again. I think Nick Chubb, rest of the season, Tags, I've got him as a top 5 running back.
I have him at number 9 because I do think his upside is capped with Kareem Hunt there. But again, they're going to get David Njoku back. All of a sudden, this offense, it's very possible that Baker Mayfield, if he's available on your waiver wire, I think you should grab him because he's actually a great stream this week against Miami. He'd be my top choice if available.
Oh, that'd be great.
He could actually finish this year like you expected him to start it once they have all these guys in the field. But Nick Chubb should go bananas this week against Miami. Like, this is, if you want to buy Nick Chubb, now is the time. It's your last chance to do it, essentially.
Yep. Last 5 weeks, 25 touches, 21, 24, 22, 27. I see that continuing the rest of the season. I don't see any reason it changes, Tags.
Yep.
So would you trade Chris Carson for Nick Chubb?
I have Carson 2 spots higher. I have Carson at my number 7 running back, and I honestly probably should put Carson up at number 6.
What about Kamara? Is he a buy low, or would you sell him?
Oh, I'm buying Kamara all day.
Oh, I'm super concerned, man.
Why?
Because Latavius Murray, I mean, I guess Kamara did have 10 receptions, 8 receptions the week before that, but we're looking at 17 carries in 2 weeks. That doesn't concern you?
Well, I mean, against Atlanta, they ran the ball like net. They didn't run the ball at all.
Oh, yeah, because they were playing from behind.
Just a terrible game for them. But
and then Tampa's a great matchup.
It's a terrible,
horrible match, sorry.
It's a great run defense. It's a terrible matchup for fantasy running backs. But Kamara, he can get it done in a variety of ways. Like, he still wound up with 15 and 22 PPR points in those games because he saw 10 targets in each game. I actually think this week is a week that Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara are going to finish as top 25 backs.
I like it. But then week 14, San Francisco, 15, Indianapolis, 16, Tennessee.
San Francisco's been struggling against the run recently. I'm not worried about that matchup. Indianapolis, they allow plenty of receptions to running backs, and we saw Jalen Samuels rack up I think 12 or 15 receptions in that game against them. So I'm not worried about Kamara.
Who are you selling high?
Who am I selling high? I was saying Devin Singletary would be one. I also think that Carlos Hyde, this is an opportunity for you to sell because Hyde, he salvaged this last game with a touchdown, but his upcoming schedule, the Colts, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Titans, the Bucs, those are all below average matchups for him. And if for whatever reason the Texans fall behind, Carlos Hyde's non-existent. Like, he's a guy that'll finish the game with like 10 to 12 carries and he just crushes you. So he's like a back-end RB3 that I'm not excited about. That, again, I would be looking to get Sony Michel if I can for him.
You know, my favorite type of player to sell high tags, and I know you agree with me, are the guys who aren't touchdown scorers who just so happen to have touchdowns in 3 straight games. And we've got one here. He's getting a lot of targets and receptions too. It's Jarvis Landry, and everyone's going to look at, you can use this as a selling point to the guy you're trading him to. Well, Jarvis Landry gets Miami this week, and then he gets Cincinnati, and you could be really excited about it. And Jarvis Landry will go back to being the guy who gets 4 receptions, 60 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 10 fantasy points per week.
Yeah, Landry is someone that I've kind of come around to saying that I have to accept him as he is, and I mean, he's a guy that is a big part of this offense, apparently. And he's kind of outproduced Odell Beckham. That's going to flip, and that's why I'm buying Odell Beckham still with the 3 of the next 4 games against the Dolphins, Bengals, and Cardinals. But Landry still, for me, is a top 30 wide receiver, but I don't know what the perceived value is on him. Can you get someone like... I don't think you can get Calvin Ridley for him. I would have wanted that.
What about Terry McLaurin?
No, I'm out on McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin gets Philly and the Giants in week 15 and 16.
I am out on McLaurin right now, man. It sucks.
Because you're out on Haskins? Or McLaurin's super good.
Oh yeah, no. Not McLaurin the talent. Like I'm in on that. Like he's a dynasty buy right now. Because I think the Redskins, again, something I mentioned last night, I think the Redskins are starting Dwayne Haskins for the rest of the season to kind of like make a point and say, if he's not ready, we're drafting a quarterback again. And they're going to do it again. They might give him one more year and just kind of wait for the 21 class. But McLaurin is going to suffer for a little bit. But that he's really good. But if he can't get it done against the Jets, that's a problem.
What about Curtis Samuel? Would you rather have Curtis Samuel or Jarvis Landry?
Curtis Samuel. He's actually a buy low.
Agree.
He ranks 6th in the NFL in air yards. The players ahead of him, so people are like, well, what does that even mean? Because like, what does that mean? Here's the 5 players ahead of him. That's all you kind of really need to know. Mike Evans, John Brown, Julio Jones, Kenny Golladay, and Keenan Allen. It just goes to show like the type of wide receivers that see those type of air yards. He's outside the top 30 in fantasy wide receivers as of right now. But with the volume he's getting and like the air yards he's getting, it's going to explode at some point, and it might be this week against the Saints. So Curtis Samuel's a good buy low.
I like that one a lot. All right, Tags, that's all for today's show, unless you had something else you want to add.
No, I just can't wait for the Sit Start show. And guys, we are week 12. I mean, 2 more weeks and it's the fantasy playoffs. We're ready.
By the way, we've got a live stream that we're going to be doing together. If you're hearing this on Monday night or Tuesday morning, Tags and I do it at 1 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesdays. We're going to be talking waiver wire, taking some Q&A. So go to youtube.com/FantasyPros to check that out. And I also want to say thanks to the sponsors of today's show. Couture.com/football to get 15% off your first purchase. You guys are going to absolutely love their stuff. And then also Manscaped. You guys remember me talking about this and Tags trying to hold it together as I was talking about it. You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code FantasyPros at Manscaped.com. And also check out the Fantasy Pros Chrome extension. And again, you have to become a Hall of Fame member to be able to use that. You can go to fantasypros.com/offers to become a 6-month Hall of Fame member for just $10. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
Thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get